I patrolled the woods for years. Then I heard my own voice. I've been a forest ranger for 15 years. I've seen everything from grisly attacks to meth camps hidden in the trees. But none of that prepared me for the night. I heard my own voice screaming for help over the radio, begging for someone to find me, even though I was alone, alive, and standing in the middle of my patrol. The Black Pines National Preserve covers over 200,000 acres of untouched wilderness, dense forest, winding rivers, and stretches of terrain where even satellite signals give up. It's beautiful, haunting, and utterly isolating. My name's Aaron Walker. I'm one of 5 senior rangers responsible for patrolling the western region of the preserve, known unofficially among staff as the Dead Stretch. Not because anything confirmed happened there, but because over the last 2 decades, several people, rangers, hikers, campers, have disappeared inside that zone without a trace. The Park Service quietly chalked it up to animal attacks or accidents, but off record, we all know better. I never believed the stories myself. You hear them around the fire pit. Talk of shadows moving through the fog, distant howling that sounds like a person, and lights that float just beyond sight. I dismissed it as nerves. Isolation plays tricks on the mind. That was before last Thursday. I'd left Tower 9 around 11:30 p.m. to do a final sweep of the northern trails before clocking out. It was a clear night, moon bright and high. My ATV hummed softly beneath me as I took the gravel switchbacks through Sector 17, a region officially listed as low activity, but locally known as Echo Ridge. The name made sense. Everything echoed strangely in that stretch of woods. Your boots on the dirt sounded a beat late. The wind felt like it circled back around behind you. It always gave me a low buzz of anxiety I couldn't quite explain. I just stopped to check a motion trigger trail cam when my handheld radio clicked. CHHHHKK. Aaron, can anyone hear me? The voice was ragged, panicked, but not unfamiliar. I froze. I knew that voice. Knew it the way you know your own reflection. It was me. Please. I need help. If anyone can hear this, I'm by the old fire tower. The fire tower. There hadn't been a functioning fire lookout in this area since the Tower 11 blazed back in 2009. It had burned down in a lightning storm. 3 rangers died. Since then, no one had gone near that part of the trail system. Not even for cleanup. My stomach twisted. My first instinct was logical. Someone was messing with me. Maybe a rookie spliced a recording from my patrol logs. It's not hard to do if you have access to the archive. But then the voice came again. Shaky. Terrified. They're copying me. They sound like me, but they're not me. Don't follow the voice. The radio cut to static. I just sat there, frozen, because it wasn't a recording. There were breaks. Emotion. A tremble I recognized in the voice, the same way I'd sounded once in Afghanistan, pinned behind a truck with no backup and a bullet in my shoulder. This was live. I radioed the ranger station. Dispatch, this is Walker. Did anyone patch a recording to Channel 7? Marla, our night tech, came back quick. Negative. Channel 7's private use only. No one else is logged in. Was there a distress call in the last 5 minutes? Nope. Quiet night. You okay, Aaron? I paused. Yeah, must have been interference. I didn't tell her what I heard. I shouldn't have gone looking. But the thing is, if I heard someone calling for help, I had to check. That's the job. And deep down, something in me needed to know. If it was a joke, I'd chew out the kid who did it. If it was something else, I turned the ATV and headed northeast, toward the ruins of Tower 11. The trail was barely usable, overgrown and dark. The moment I passed the barrier sign, the air changed. It felt thick, still, like stepping into a room that had been sealed too long. My headlights flickered, but I kept going. I passed mile marker 37. Then my engine died. No es puter. No cove. Just dead. Lights off. Battery drained. My flashlight still worked, thankfully, so I slung my rifle, grabbed the torch, and started walking the last mile. The woods were too quiet. Not the natural quiet of night, but a hollow silence. No insects, no wind, just the crunch of my boots and the faint sound of my own breathing. Then a whisper, to my left. Help! I snapped around. Nothing but trees. The voice sounded like it had come from just a few yards away. Hello, this is Ranger Walker. If anyone's out here, call out. Silence. Then from behind me. I turned again. Nothing. That's when I realized the voice had come from the opposite direction I was facing each time. It was circling me. I raised the flashlight. The beam caught on something ahead, a structure. Tower 11. Half the top was collapsed. Burn scars still marked the support beams. Rusted ladders led up into shadows. And standing at the base was a man. He wore the same ranger uniform as me. Same jacket. Zamahat. Same stance. When I stepped forward, he stepped back. I shouted, "Hey, are you injured?" He raised his arm and waved. Same movement I'd made when I first joined the force. The casual wave I did without thinking. It was exact. I took a cautious step closer. He turned and bolted into the woods. Without thinking, I followed. Branches whipped at my face. I ducked and weaved between trees, the flashlight bouncing wildly. But I couldn't catch him. Finally, the figure vanished behind a ridge of rock. I climbed up after him and froze at the top. Below me was a clearing I'd never seen before. A perfect circle, maybe 30 feet wide. The ground was black, scorched. Nothing grew inside it. And at the center was me, lying face down, motionless. I stumbled down, heart in my throat. Was this some kind of prank? A hallucination? But as I got closer, the body stirred. It turned its head. Same face. Same scar under the chin. Same everything. Its eyes locked onto mine. And it smiled. That's when it spoke. Why did you follow me, Aaron? Its voice wasn't quite right. A second delay. A wetness behind the words. It stood, limbs moving like a puppet on strings. Then, from the woods behind me, I heard a dozen other voices. All mine. Some crying. Some laughing. All calling my name. I ran. I didn't stop until I reached the road. The ATV was still dead. I had to hike 4 miles back to the tower. When I made it back, Marla said I looked like I'd seen a ghost. I didn't tell her the truth, but I checked the patrol logs the next day. No one had access Channel 7. No other ranger had been on that trail. And the footage from the trail cam near the fire tower, it had been wiped. Clean. Like someone, or something, didn't want anyone seeing what I saw. Forest Ranger Aaron Walker, patrolling the haunted Echo Ridge, hears a distress call over his radio from his own voice. Investigating, he encounters a doppelgänger wearing his uniform, leading him to a scorched clearing where he sees his own unconscious body, only for it to rise and speak in a distorted version of his voice. The forest echoes with more versions of his voice as he flees in terror. I didn't sleep that night. Even after I made it back to Tower 9, locked the doors, and shut off all radios, I couldn't close my eyes. Every time I did, I saw myself, lying in the dirt, lifting its head with that glassy smile, lips moving like mine, but not quite synced. Like a film just barely out of sync with its audio. When morning finally broke, I was still sitting in the watch chair with my rifle across my lap. I told no one what had happened. Not Marla, not my supervisor, not even Tom, my closest friend in the department. Because how the hell do you explain that you chased your own voice into a place that no longer exists on the official park maps? You don't. You shut up, and you hope it never happens again. But it did. It started small. The next night, my radio turned itself on. I was eating dinner, Canned stew, same as always, when I heard the click from across the room. I turned, and there it was, Channel 7 live. No static, no chatter, just silence. And then, Aaron. I froze. It was my voice again, but not the desperate, broken version I'd heard before. This one was calm, measured. Aaron, you're not safe. They know you saw them. I slammed the radio off. I told myself it was a glitch. Just a damn glitch. But something deep inside me, the same primal part that made my hair stand on end when I first saw that doppelgänger, knew it wasn't. I grabbed my map and drew a red circle around the clearing where I'd seen the thing. I marked the burn tower, and then I did something I never thought I would do as a ranger. I filed a false route report. I told dispatch I'd be patrolling Sector 6 for the next 48 hours. In reality, I was going back. The hike took hours. I had to stash my ATV halfway there due to blocked paths and fallen trees, though some looked more placed than fallen. When I reached the area around Tower 11, I stopped cold, because the clearing wasn't there anymore. Where there had once been a perfect black circle in the earth, there was now grass. Fresh, green, new grass. No scorch marks. No trail. No sign of a body. It looked like nothing had ever happened. But I knew better. I walked toward the center and felt that same pressure again, like the air itself was pressing down on my shoulders. My ears popped. The wind disappeared. And then the smell hit me. Burnt hair. Rotting meat. Something dead. I turned in a slow circle, hand on my holster. Nothing moved. Not a bird. Not a squirrel. And then I heard it. A laugh. My laugh. Coming from above. I whipped my flashlight upward and nearly screamed. Clinging to the upper branches of the trees, maybe 20 feet above me, was a figure. Its limbs wrapped around the trunk like a spider. Skin pale. Eyes glowing faintly white. And my face smiling. It dropped. I fired. The shot echoed like a cannon blast, but the thing was already gone, vanished between the trees. I didn't chase it this time. I turned and ran until my lungs burned. Back at Tower 9, I dug into the old archives. Things most rangers never even knew existed. Reports that were classified, redacted, buried under decades of Forest Service bureaucracy. And I found something. Tower 11 was decommissioned in 2009 after the lightning fire, yes. But what wasn't public knowledge? There was no lightning strike. 3 rangers went missing the night of the fire. Their bodies were never recovered. All equipment was destroyed. And in one typed note, almost completely blacked out, I found this line. Entity appears to mimic biological signatures, including voice and appearance. Subject 2 terminated after responding to auditory lure believed to be from Subject 1. They weren't killed in a fire. They were hunted by something that pretended to be them. The next night, I set up motion sensors around the base of my tower. Cameras, flares, tripwires. If it came back, I'd see it coming. And sure enough, at 2:37 a.m., the alarm tripped. Camera feed flickered on, and there I was, standing at the tree lean, staring up at my own tower, unmoving, expressionless. It just stood there, watching. I didn't move, didn't breathe. The thing eventually turned and walked back into the woods. But the next night, it came closer, 30 feet from the base, then 20, then 10, and then one night, it didn't leave. It climbed. I sat in the corner of my cabin, gun trained on the trapdoor above the ladder. The cameras were all offline. My flashlight flickered. The radio was dead. Then the trapdoor creaked open, and a voice called out, "Aaron, it's Tom. You okay, man?" I got worried. Tom's voice. My best friend. Except Tom was off duty. He was in another tower, 15 miles away. I didn't answer. Then the voice changed. It deepened, gurgled, almost playful. "Hey, Aaron, It began to laugh. That twisted, unnatural version of my laugh again. Then silence. I waited for what felt like hours. Finally, I crept forward, opened the trapdoor, and nothing was there. Just claw marks on the wood. 4 sets. One too many for a human hand. I tried to report it, but when I played the camera footage for my supervisor, it was all gone. All of it. The files were corrupted. Even my voice recordings from the radio logs had been erased. And then, I got a call from upper management. A voice I didn't recognize told me I was being reassigned to a different district. Effective immediately, I asked who issued the order. They said it came from the Department of the Interior. I left Black Pines the next day. But the thing is, last night, back at my news station in Utah, I was scanning through frequencies when I heard it again. My voice. Don't follow the voice. They copy. They become. And this time, it was coming from 2 places at once. The night I heard my own voice echoing from 2 separate sources in Utah, I realized something horrifying. I hadn't left it behind. It had followed me. Whatever it was, whatever was wearing my voice, my face, myself, it hadn't been confined to Black Pines National Forest. That wasn't its home. That was just one of its feeding grounds. And now I'd led it to a new one. I stayed in the Utah station for less than a week. The very first night, I heard tapping on the tower window. Just 3 soft, rhythmic knocks. It was 1:14 a.m. The wind was dead still. No trees were close enough to reach. When I opened the blinds, I nearly dropped the flashlight. There, standing on a narrow catwalk platform outside my second-story window, was me. Or something trying to be me. It had my uniform, my hair, even my scar above the left brow. But skin looked wrong. Too smooth. Plastic-like. And its eyes, the pupils were too wide, swallowing most of the iris, and they didn't blink. It didn't move when I looked at it. Didn't speak. It just tilted its head very slightly, like it was studying me. Then, with unnatural smoothness, it turned, stepped backward off the platform, and didn't fall. It simply vanished. After that, I stopped sleeping entirely. I went 3 days without rest, cycling between researching forest entity reports, encrypted ranger files, and off-the-record paranormal databases. What I found disturbed me to my core. The phenomenon wasn't isolated. There were documented cases dating back to the early 1900s, accounts from loggers, hikers, and military patrols who'd seen copies of themselves. They called them mirrors, doubles, false men. One Navajo legend matched almost exactly, the Yinald Lushii, or Skinwalker. But this one wasn't limited to shape-shifting into animals. This one learned a person, watched them, followed them, and then became them, down to their voice, down to their memories, down to their soul. And if it could do that, then who was to say the real you ever came back? I turned to my resignation the next morning. They didn't fight it. No exit interview. No transfer attempt. Just a single typed letter and a final paycheck. Almost like they expected it. Like this had happened before. I went back home to Wyoming, to my family's old cabin in the valley. I thought maybe if I isolated myself, stayed off-grid, I could lose it. But 2 nights in, the doorbell rang. At 3:03 a.m. No one should have known I was there. No one had the address. The landline wasn't even hooked up. But the bell rang again. And then I heard a voice through the crack in the wood. Dad, it was my daughter's voice. Except my daughter was at university across the country. Hundreds of miles away. I didn't move. Didn't breathe. Dad, I need help. Please. I pressed my back to the wall, shotgun shaking in my hands. And that's when I realized something was very, very wrong. She hadn't said, I'm outside. She hadn't knocked. She hadn't even said, it's me, Natalie. Just Dad, like it was guessing, fishing, trying out the right bait. I called Natalie the moment the sun rose. She picked up immediately, groggy, annoyed, but very much alive and very much not standing outside my cabin the night before. That confirmed it. It was escalating, becoming braver, and now it was going after my family. I installed floodlights, motion alarms, and cameras. I wired the house with backup batteries, EMP shielding, and thermal sensors. I even laid salt lines, just in case the legends were true. For 3 days, nothing. And then, on the 4th night, the lights snapped on. Every single one of them. I ran to the monitor, heart hammering in my chest. There were 12 figures surrounding my house. All of them me. Each one had slight differences. A bruise on one cheek, a clean-shaven chin, a different jacket, but they all had my face. They just stood there, staring. And then, one by one, they opened their mouths and began to speak in perfect unison. You left the woods, Aaron, but the woods never left you. The power cut out. I lit the backup generator, grabbed my emergency flare, ran to the window. Nothing. The yard was empty. I rewound the camera footage. But this time there was nothing there at all. No figures. No lights. Not even me. I finally snapped. I took all the notes I'd gathered, all the files, the recordings, the reports, and drove 300 miles to the nearest federal office. I demanded a meeting with their internal investigations division. I waited 5 hours. Then, a man in a gray suit sat across from me in a room that smelled like antiseptic and old paper. He didn't give his name, didn't ask questions. He simply said, "You saw one of them, didn't you?" That's when I knew they knew. The government, the Park Service, the Rangers, all of them. He slid me a folder marked Project Hollow Echo. Inside were photos. Tower 11, the creature in the clearing. A half-burned ranger's body with 2 shadows cast on the ground beside it, both in the shape of the same man. Me. He told me they first noticed the phenomenon in 1987 after a series of disappearances in Yosemite. But it went back farther, much farther. According to the data, these things weren't just mimics. They were replacements. Sometimes the original didn't survive. Sometimes the replacement didn't even know it wasn't real. That's why they began monitoring radio frequencies. Because every mimic eventually made one fatal mistake. It echoed. Repeated phrases. Mimicked emotions. Replayed memories like a broken record. The human brain learns from experience. These things just performed. And when 2 versions of the same voice started speaking in different locations, that was the signal. That was the breach. I asked the man why they weren't warning people, why they hadn't shut down the forests. His response chilled me. Because they've already left the forests, Aaron. They're in towns now, cities, offices, schools. The only thing we can do is watch. I left that meeting with one thought burning in my skull. If they're already everywhere, how many people do you know that aren't who they say they are? How many yous are out there? And if they can mimic you, learn your patterns, laugh like you, remember your childhood, then how do you know you are still really you? That night, I stared into the bathroom mirror for hours, watching myself, looking for the flicker, the echo, the thing that would tell me I was still real. But all I saw was me, smiling. You know what's worse than seeing something that shouldn't exist? Realizing it might be you. After the government officer handed me that hollow echo file, I couldn't sleep, couldn't eat. I was afraid to close my eyes, afraid that when I opened them, I wouldn't be the one looking back. I started recording myself constantly. Voice, video, everything. Looking for inconsistencies. Tracing my own steps. Measuring everything from speech patterns to habits. But then, the anomalies began. Tiny things. I'd wake up and find my boots were muddy, even though I hadn't left the house. My notebook had a page filled with writing I didn't remember, written in my handwriting. I'd hear the microwave beep at 3 a.m., only to find a plate of eggs on the counter, still warm. I live alone. Or at least, I thought I did. I went back to my storage locker, where I'd kept the old Ranger radio I'd smuggled from Black Pines. Dusty, still reeking of pine sap and static. I switched it on. Dead silence. Then, at exactly 3:33 a.m., it crackled to life. Tower 11 to dispatch. Copy. Copy. Do you hear me? It's Aaron. I don't know where I am. There's another me out here. It's wearing my face. My hand trembled. That was my voice, but it wasn't a recording. It was a live broadcast. And the signal? It was coming from within a 5-mile radius. I slammed the locker shut and ran. I didn't go home. Instead, I drove out to an abandoned ranger station deep in the Wind River Range. One of the few places without cameras, satellites, or reliable signal. I brought weapons, flares, 3 recorders, and a gallon of gasoline. If the thing followed me, I would end it here for good. But I wasn't prepared for what I found. The station looked untouched, dusty, quiet, empty, until I reached the basement. There, carved into the concrete walls, were dozens, hundreds of names. All of them were ranger names, and all of them were followed by 2 dates. The first was a birth date. The second, not a death date. It was activation. And beside my name, it read, Aaron Fielding. Born March 14th, 1986. Activated May 5th, 2018. My activation date. The day I started hearing my own voice in the woods. That was when I realized something horrifying. Maybe I hadn't just encountered the echo. Maybe I was one. Maybe I was the copy. A replacement, sent to live a life the original had already lost. A sleeper. A decoy. A shadow. The more I thought back, the more things fell apart. Memories that didn't line up. A missing scar from a childhood accident. Dreams of a forest I'd never patrolled. A disgust for mirrors I couldn't explain. I stared into the broken glass in the locker room mirror, clutching my own face. Tell me the truth, I whispered to myself. And from behind me, a voice, my voice, answered. You already know it. I spun around, weapon raised. There it stood. Another me. But this one wasn't trying to look human anymore. Its skin was sagging like wet leather. Its eyes were just deep pits, glassy and cold. And its jaw, unhinged far too wide to be natural. It wasn't trying to hide anymore. And it smiled. A crackling, wet sound filled the room as it spoke again, in a voice I'd used for years. You're the stray. I'm the original. It lunged. I fired. The first shot blew a hole through its shoulder, but it didn't bleed. It just hissed and twisted its body backward, limbs snapping into impossible shapes. It crawled up the wall like a spider, shrieking something in a voice that flickered between mine, my daughter's, my father's, then finally fell into a guttural growl that was none of us. I ran, lit the gasoline trail. The fire roared behind me as the station began to collapse. But as I stood outside, smoke in my lungs, something moved through the flames. Still alive, still smiling. I drove for hours. Didn't stop until I crossed 3 state lines. I burned everything, my clothes, my phone, my ID. I don't know what part of me was real anymore. I only knew one thing. That wasn't the only one. If I was a copy, were there others? Was I the only Aaron Fielding left? Or were there more of me? Some dormant, some already activated, some waiting. The final confirmation came 1 week later. A man knocked on the door of my motel room in Colorado. He was tall, pale, wearing ranger green. When I opened the door, he looked me in the eye. And he was me, but something was wrong. His eyes were warm, real. He looked afraid. You're one of them, he whispered. But you don't have to be. He handed me a slip of paper. Coordinates. Then he stepped back and said, find the source, or we're all lost. Then he vanished. And now here I am, recording this from the edge of those coordinates. The center of it all, the place where the echoes were born. A forgotten research station buried under the snow, labeled Project Father Mirror. The door is open. The wind is whispering my name. And somewhere inside, I hear my own voice, calling me. You've heard of doppelgängers, seen the urban legends, maybe, but what if yours wasn't just a ghost, a glitch, or a trick of the light? What if it replaced you perfectly and no one ever knew? What if the government knew and helped it happen? This is the final entry from a ranger who discovered the truth and followed it to the heart of something the world was never supposed to see. The underground facility was built beneath a frozen lake, buried beneath layers of ice and secrecy. The sign above the cracked steel entrance read, Project Father Mirror, Station 09. Authorized personnel only. Absolute mirror zone. The concrete hallway beyond was lined with flickering red lights and exposed wiring, like the place had been evacuated mid-panic. My boots echoed against the floor, but even more disturbing, there were two sets of footsteps, mine and someone else's, always just behind me, never beside, never ahead. Inside the main atrium, I found the mirror, except it wasn't a mirror in the way you're thinking. It was a massive, circular slab of obsidian-like material, 12 feet high, with strange, shifting shadows swimming behind its surface. And there were people, copies, standing on the other side. Dozens. All me. My heart slammed against my ribs. They weren't reflections. They were autonomous. Some were smiling. Some were crying. One was standing with its head tilted so violently sideways it looked broken, and one was mouthing every word I said in perfect sync, like it knew I was coming. I checked the paper the other ranger gave me. There were only 3 words written. Destroy the source. Beside the mirror, a control panel blinked faintly. It listed entries labeled test subjects and cycle approvals. Every ranger listed had 2 statuses, original, removed, and copy, live. I found my name, Aaron Fielding. Under mine, the original was listed as removed, and the copy, me, was still active. I didn't know what to believe anymore. Was I the real Aaron who escaped destruction? Or was I just the last active echo, so far gone that I believed I was still human? The mirror shimmered again. This time it spoke. My voice came from it, layered over thousands of others. Welcome home, Aaron. Suddenly, alarms blared. The facility shook. The mirror pulsed like a heartbeat, and black tendrils began to crawl from its edges, reaching outward into the room. I fired at the panel, bullets ripping through wires and screens. Sparks flew, and one of the displays exploded. The mirror began to scream. Not an alarm, not feedback. It was every voice I had ever known calling me to return. I ran deeper into the structure, desperate to find a way to shut it all down. In the heart of the station, I found Test Chamber Alpha. Inside, dozens of sealed pods lined the walls. Floating in viscous fluid were half-formed humans. Some looked like me. Others were incomplete. Blank eyes, missing limbs, mouths frozen mid-scream. One pod was open. Mine. A small tag dangled beside it, like a birth certificate from hell. Subject: AF. Copy successful. Host mind status: fragmented. Integrity: stable for now. So, I wasn't just a copy. I was one of the first successful ones. And I was never supposed to know. A siren blared again. From the hallway, the others began to arrive. The malformed versions. Crawling, screeching, snapping. Their faces half-baked, limbs twitching in unison. They weren't just chasing me. They were trying to absorb me. Merge us all back into the mirror. I tossed flares down the hallway and sealed the chamber behind me, using a steel beam to bar the door. Then I climbed onto the catwalk above the pods and located the main power conduit. It was labeled Core Link, Father Mirror. I didn't think. I just grabbed the axe mounted to the emergency panel and swung. Once. Twice. The third hit was the last. The power failed. The mirror let out a final roar, like a collapsing black hole. The pods imploded one by one, fluid draining into the floor. The screaming stopped. Everything went dark. I woke up in the snow, outside the collapse station. Frozen blood coated my hands. My skin was burned. My radio buzzed with static, but there were no more footsteps behind me. No more whispers. And when I looked into the ice nearby, all I saw was me. No copies. No hecho. Just me. That was a year ago. I've been moving place to place, keeping my head down. But lately, things are changing. I see flashes of myself in crowds. A woman whispered my name at a gas station in Utah, and I'd never met her. Someone called my number last night and just breathed in my voice for 7 minutes straight. I'm not sure I truly stopped it, but I know this. There's more than one Father Mirror. They built others. They're waking up now. And the copies? They're not waiting in the woods anymore. They're already among us.